The spring air of Lakeland was filled with the scent of blooming magnolias and the sound of music coming from the James Dewey High School Gymnasium prom night. The event all high school students had been waiting for was in full swing, garlands of gold and blue ribbons. The school colors hung from the ceiling, shimmering in the light of specially installed spotlights. A DJ played the latest hits, and the dance floor was filled with young men in smart suits and girls in evening gowns. Desiree Talley was the star of the evening. In an elegant emerald dress that set off her dark skin, she attracted everyone's attention, not only with her flawless appearance, but also with her confidence. A gold medalist, student council president, and future Howard Law School student, she epitomized success and determination. "Prom queen!" someone shouted as she walked past a group of classmates. Desiree smiled, but there was tension in her eyes. She looked around nervously as if searching for someone in the crowd. In the corner of the hall, not far from the makeshift photo area, stood the parents of the graduates. Among them stood out an elegant woman in an austere dark blue suit, Octavia Talley, Desiree's stepmother. Her impeccable posture and cold gaze created an invisible zone of alienation around her. Next to her was Marcus Talley, Desiree's father, a large man with graying temples, watching his daughter with pride. Octavia glanced back and forth at her husband, and then to the other end of the hall, where a group of teachers were watching the festivities. Among them was Levante Johnson, a tall, charismatic history teacher, a favorite of students and colleagues. The celebration continued. The DJ announced a slow dance, and couples swirled in the center of the room. Desiree was standing by the refreshments table when Octavia approached her. "You look great, darling," she said, holding out a glass of punch. "I'm so proud of you." Desiree took the glass, but was in no hurry to drink. "Thank you," she replied dryly. Something akin to contempt flashed in her eyes. "Your father wants to take some family photos," Octavia continued, fixing her perfectly styled hair. "Of course," Desiree nodded. "Only I need to excommunicate first." Octavia followed her stepdaughter's gaze as she headed for the exit of the hall, then quickly looked around and followed her. About 30 minutes had passed. Marcus Talley looked around restlessly, searching for his daughter and wife. "Has anyone seen Desiree?" he asked a group of female graduates standing nearby. "She went to the restroom," one of the girls replied. "But that was a long time ago." Marcus headed toward the girls' restroom and asked one of the passing teachers to see if his daughter was there. A moment later, the entire hallway was silenced by a piercing scream. The lifeless body of Desiree Talley was discovered in one of the toilet stalls. Her head was in a toilet bowl filled with vomit. Her elegant emerald dress was stained, and her once perfect hair was reduced to wet, tangled strands. Instantly, the alarm went up. The school principal called an ambulance and the police, while trying to keep the students and parents calm. The prom was interrupted, and everyone was asked to remain in the auditorium until law enforcement arrived. Detective Eberl Worthington arrived on the scene 20 minutes after the call. Tall, with an athletic build, wearing an impeccably ironed suit, he moved with the confidence of a man who knew his job precisely. His attentive eyes quickly assessed the situation without missing a single detail. The scene had already been secured, the paramedics had pronounced death, and the forensics team had begun their work. Worthington put on gloves and cautiously examined the body, still untouched from the discovery. "What do we have?" he asked the first arriving patrolman. "Desiree Talley, 18 years old, found dead in a toilet stall. Supposedly had too much alcohol, passed out while vomiting and choked to death. Prom night, you understand, detective." Worthington frowned. "Who discovered the body?" "Mrs. Clark, the literature teacher. The girl's father was concerned that his daughter was missing for a long time and asked her to check the restroom." The detective looked around the stall carefully. There was no bottle or glass of alcohol nearby. Only traces of vomit and water were visible on the floor. "Where are the parents?" he asked, straightening up. "In the principal's office. Father's in shock, barely speaks. Stepmother's trying to calm him down." "Stepmother?" "Yes, Octavia Talley. They've been married for 5 years." Worthington nodded and headed for the principal's office. On the way, He stopped by the gym where the graduating seniors and their parents remained under the supervision of teachers and a few officers. "I need to speak to Desiree Talley's close friends," he addressed the nearest officer, "and with anyone who last saw her before the incident." In the principal's office, Marcus Talley sat with his head down on his hands. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. Octavia stood next to him, straight as a string, with red but dry eyes. "Mr. and Mrs. Talley, I'm Detective Eberl Worthington," he introduced himself. "Allow me to offer my condolences for your loss." Marcus raised his head. His face was contorted with grief. My little girl. "I realize this isn't the best time, but I need to ask some questions," the detective continued. "Did Desiree use alcohol? Has she had a problem with it before?" "Never," Marcus exclaimed. "She wouldn't even drink champagne on New Year's Eve, said it interfered with mental clarity. Then what could have happened today?" "Graduation," Octavia said quietly. "A special day. Perhaps she decided to celebrate in a special way." Worthington looked at the woman carefully. Her voice was steady, but the fingers clutching her purse were white with tension. "When was the last time you saw Desiree?" "She said she had to go out," Octavia replied. I can't exactly say. It was as if time had stopped." "And you, Mr. Talley?" "I was talking to Jamal's father, her classmate. Then I looked for Desiree for family photos, and didn't find any." Worthington made a note in his notebook. "Did either of you go into the women's restroom before Desiree was found there?" Marcus shook his head. Octavia said slowly, "I was looking for her. Looked in the restroom, but I didn't see anyone. All the stalls were closed. I figured she was somewhere with her friends." The detective nodded. "Thank you. I'll get back to you with more questions." Back in the hallway, Worthington met the medical examiner, Dr. Ramona Gaines. "Abrol, this is a strange situation," she said without preamble. "Preliminarily, death occurred about an hour ago. The cause appears to be asphyxia due to drowning, but there are nuances." "Like what?" "First of all, there's hardly any odor of alcohol. Second, there are pressure marks on her neck, not pronounced, but noticeable, like someone held her head in water." Worthington frowned. "You don't think it's an accident?" "Can't say for sure yet. We need to do a full autopsy." At that moment, a young officer approached the detective. "Sir, we've interviewed several friends of the deceased. They all say the same thing. Desiree didn't drink tonight, only punch. She was against alcohol in general." "Thank you." Worthington nodded and returned to the scene. He took another close look at the toilet stall. Something didn't add up in the picture of the accident. If the girl hadn't been drinking, where had the vomiting gotten so bad? And why couldn't she lift her head out of the toilet? In the hallway, he spotted Octavia Talley standing at the window. She seemed calm, but her gaze was blank, directed nowhere. Noticing the detective, she quickly turned away and headed toward her husband. Worthington approached a group of teachers, including Levante Johnson. The history teacher looked shaken, his normally confident posture replaced by the slouch of a man under heavy weight. "Mr. Johnson, I'd like to talk to you about Desiree Talley," the detective addressed him. "Of course," Levante nodded, casting a brief glance in Octavia's direction. "What was Desiree like as a student?" "Brilliant. One of the best of my entire career. She had an analytical mind and a desire for justice. She was going to be a lawyer." "Did she have any problems? Conflicts with anyone?" Levante hesitated. "Not so much conflicts. She was principled. Sometimes it created tension." "With whom, exactly?" "With the other students, mostly. She didn't tolerate lies and deceit." Worthington noticed the teacher glancing at Octavia again. "And with her family? What was her relationship like with her father and stepmother?" "With her father, wonderful. He adored her. And with Mrs. Talley, it's more complicated. You know how it is with blended families." "No, I don't. Tell me." "Well, sometimes there was tension. Octavia is a perfectionist, and Desiree was independent, but I didn't notice any open conflicts." The detective made a few more notes. "Thank you for the information, Mr. Johnson. I may have to have another conversation with you." By late afternoon, the school was empty. Desiree's body had been taken to the morgue. Forensics were finishing up their work at the scene. Worthington sat in the empty classroom, reviewing notes and photos from the scene. Something was bugging him, some detail he'd missed. The phone rang. It was Dr. Gaines. "April, are you still in school? I have the preliminary toxicology results." "Go ahead." "There's alcohol in Desiree's blood, but the concentration is too low to cause unconsciousness. But there's something interesting. Traces of flunitrazepam." "A rape drug?" "Exactly. Combined with even a small amount of alcohol, it could cause severe dizziness, nausea, and unconsciousness." Worthington exhaled slowly. "So someone put the drug in her drink?" "It would appear so, and given the bruising on her neck, April, I don't think we're dealing with an accident." The detective closed the notebook. A picture was beginning to emerge, and it was much darker than it had originally appeared. A harmless prom night had turned into a crime scene, and the death of a promising young girl was not a tragic accident, but a cold-blooded murder. The morning was cool, but clear. Detective April Worthington sat in his office, looking at the photographs of the scene. The case, which initially seemed like a tragic accident, had now taken on a sinister hue. A bright, promising girl had been murdered on a day that should have been one of the happiest of her life. Who would want to eliminate Desiree Talley, and why? Worthington's first order of business was to request the school's surveillance footage from prom night. It was standard protocol in such investigations. Visual evidence could tell more than dozens of witness statements. But the tech department said it would take at least 24 hours to process all the recordings. The school's CCTV system was outdated, with many blind spots and poor image quality. "Prepare especially carefully the footage from the corridor near the girls' toilet and from the drinks table," Worthington ordered. "And see if there are any cameras that may have recorded Octavia Talley's movements." While waiting for the results of the video footage to be analyzed, the detective decided to waste no time and began by researching the family history. He learned from the case files that Marcus Talley had been widowed 6 years ago when his wife was killed in a car accident. Desiree was 12 at the time. A year later, Marcus met Octavia Bristol, a successful realtor, and they were married a few months after meeting. He was quick to find a replacement, the detective muttered as he looked through photos from social media. In them, Marcus and Octavia looked like the perfect couple, successful, attractive, with beaming smiles at all the official events. Desiree was also smiling in those photos, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. Worthington noticed that the distance between her and her stepmother in the photographs increased over time. In the last pictures, they stood on opposite sides of Marcus, as if avoiding direct contact. The next step was to interview Desiree's classmates. Worthington chose 3 of the deceased's closest friends based on information from her phone and social media. The first to arrive at the police station was Naima King, a frail girl with crying eyes and nervous movements. "Desiree was my best friend since 7th grade, she began, rubbing the bracelet on her wrist. "We were preparing for college together. She wanted to be a civil rights attorney." "What was she like?" Worthington asked. "Determined, principled, sometimes even too much so. If she thought something was wrong, she didn't keep quiet, even if it caused problems." "Did she have any conflicts at school?" Naima nodded. "Last year, she exposed a group of high school students who were selling answers to tests. A lot of people were mad at her, but Desiree said fairness was more important than popularity." "And personal conflicts? Maybe with any of the guys?" "No, she wasn't seriously dating anyone, said college was more important than romance." "How was her relationship with her family? With her father? With her stepmother?" Naima hesitated. "With Mr. Talley, everything was fine. He loved her very much, supported her in everything. But with Mrs. Talley, more complicated." "In what way?" "They were very different. Desiree is the straightforward one, and her stepmother is, how shall I put it, slippery, always smiling, but her gaze is cold. Desiree said she never knows what Octavia is really thinking." "Did they have any open conflicts?" "Not in front of me, but in the last couple of months, Desiree has gotten kind of tense, especially when it came to family. She'd cancel our meetings, say she had something important to deal with." Worthington made a note in his notebook. "She didn't say what exactly?" "No, but one day I saw her watching her stepmother through the school library window. Mrs. Talley was standing in the parking lot talking to Mr. Johnson, our history teacher. They were standing very close to each other. When I asked Desiree what she was doing, She quickly moved away from the window and said she was just taking a break from class. This information interested the detective. He remembered the strange looks exchanged between Octavia and Levante Johnson at the prom. Did you notice anything unusual about Mrs. Talley and Mr. Johnson's relationship? Naima shrugged. I don't know. Mr. Johnson was Desiree's class teacher, so they talked a lot. But sometimes it seemed like there was something between them. Looks, you know. And they were often around each other at school functions. After talking to Naima, Worthington met with two more of Desiree's friends. They confirmed the image of a principled, determined girl who wasn't afraid to speak her mind. None of them mentioned any obvious conflicts with her stepmother, but all of them noted a strange tension between Desiree and Octavia lately. Worthington decided to test a hunch about a possible connection between Octavia and the history teacher. He arranged a meeting with Levante Johnson at the school, under the pretense of getting more information about Desiree's academic life. Johnson met the detective in his classroom, a spacious room with maps and historical posters on the walls. The teacher looked tired, with eyes red from lack of sleep. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Mr. Johnson, Worthington began. I'm trying to put together a complete picture of Desiree Talley's life. Of course, detective. How can I help you? You were her classroom teacher. How would you characterize her? Desiree was an exceptional student. Smart, hardworking, with a strong sense of justice. Sometimes that caused problems. She didn't always realize that the world wasn't black and white. And how were her relationships with other teachers? With her classmates? With teachers, fine. Everyone respected her. With her classmates, it was more difficult. Not everyone liked her principled behavior, but she had no real enemies. Worthington noticed Johnson tapping his fingers nervously on the table. What about her family? Did you have much contact with her parents? The teacher visibly tensed, mostly with Mrs. Talley. She was actively involved in Desiree's school life, attending parent-teacher conferences, helping with organizing activities. And Mr. Talley? He's been busy with work. The construction business requires a lot of time. How would you describe the relationship between Desiree and her stepmother? Johnson averted his gaze. Complicated, as is often the case in these situations. Octavia tried her best, but Desiree still missed her real mother. Worthington decided to get to the direct question. Mr. Johnson, what is your relationship with Octavia Talley? The teacher flinched. What do you mean? Several witnesses have noted a certain intimacy between the two of you. That's absurd, Johnson replied a little too quickly. We just know each other well through school activities. Lakeland is a small town, detective. And yet, Worthington insisted, watching the teacher's reaction carefully. You've been seen together outside of school, in situations that are hard to explain as professional relationships. Levante swallowed. I don't understand what you're getting at. And what does this have to do with Desiree's tragic death? That's what I'm trying to find out, the detective replied calmly. Did Desiree know something she wasn't supposed to know? Johnson stood up abruptly. I think we should end this conversation. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact my attorney. Worthington nodded, wrote down the attorney's contact information, and left the school, even more certain of his suspicions. Back at the station, the detective found that CSI had unlocked Desiree's cell phone. Among the many photos, messages, and notes, there was something that caught his attention, a series of pictures taken in apparent secrecy. They showed Octavia and Levante Johnson sitting in a cafe, holding hands. Another photo showed them kissing in a car in an empty parking lot. The dates on the pictures indicated they were taken within the last month. That's it, Worthington muttered. We have a motive. But more information was needed for a complete picture. The detective decided to meet with Shanika Powell, Desiree's closest friend, who had been unable to attend the interview that morning due to severe emotional distress. Shanika agreed to talk to the detective at her home. She was a serious young woman with an attentive gaze and a calm manner of speech that resembled Desiree herself in the photographs. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Worthington began. I understand how difficult this is for you. Shanika nodded. Desiree was like a sister to me. We've been friends since kindergarten. So you knew her before your mother died? Before her stepmother came along? Yes, it changed her a lot. First losing her mom, then having a new woman in the house so quickly. It was hard on her. How did she treat Octavia? Tried to give her a chance at first. Desiree was reasonable, realized her father needed support, but gradually she began to notice inconsistencies. What kind of inconsistencies? Octavia played the role of the perfect wife and stepmother in public, but at home she was cold, calculating, interested only in Mr. Talley's status and money. Desiree said she'd never seen Octavia look at her father with real affection. And lately? Did Desiree mention any specific problems with her stepmother? Shanika hesitated, then pulled out her cell phone. 2 weeks ago she sent me a text, said she'd discovered something awful about Octavia and didn't know what to do. She showed Worthington the correspondence. Desiree wrote, "Caught her. This affair has been going on for months. I don't know whether to tell my father. It would ruin him." Did she mention the name of the man Octavia was having an affair with? No, but I think it was Mr. Johnson. Desiree has said several times that it's strange how often she and Octavia find themselves alone together to discuss her academic success. And what did she decide to do with this information? In the last text she sent me the morning before graduation, she wrote that she couldn't keep quiet any longer, that she would tell her father the truth right after the ceremony. It was important information. Worthington thanked Shanika and returned to the station where more information awaited him. Officer Tyrone Baker, who was in charge of reviewing financial and medical records, reported an interesting detail. "Detective, we found that Octavia Talley has been seeing Dr. Clarissa Lawrence, a psychiatrist, on a regular basis. She has prescriptions for several potent drugs, including sleeping pills containing substances similar to those found in Desiree's blood." "Clarissa Lawrence?" Worthington hesitated. "That name is familiar to me." "She's Octavia Talley's best friend. They went to college together. According to social media, they see each other often, travel together." So Octavia had access to the same drugs that were used to dope Desiree? Exactly. At that moment, a member of the tech department entered the office with a flashcard. "Detective Worthington, we've analyzed the school's security footage. You might want to take a look at this." Worthington turned on the video on his computer. Despite the grainy image, you could clearly make out Octavia Talley approaching the drinks table about half an hour before the estimated time of Desiree's death. She looks around, then quickly adds something to one of the punch glasses. A few minutes later, Desiree approaches the table, and Octavia holds out that particular glass to her. "We have her," Worthington pronounced. "We have motive, and now we have proof." Sunlight streamed through the blinds in Detective Ebal Worthington's office. Lakeland was bathed in the typical Florida summer heat, but the police station room was cool with air conditioning and a tense investigative atmosphere. The detective methodically laid out on the table the evidence gathered over the past 2 days: crime scene photos, toxicology reports, printouts of messages from Desiree's phone, and finally, the surveillance footage that captured the moment Octavia slipped something into her stepdaughter's drink. Worthington was almost certain that Octavia Talley had killed Desiree to cover up her affair with the history teacher. But to be absolutely certain, he needed hard evidence and a confession. He went through Desiree's cell phone messages one more time. Among them, he found a note dated the day of graduation. "Talk to Dad after the ceremony. Can't keep quiet anymore. He deserves to know the truth." It confirmed what Shaniqua said about her friend's intentions. Worthington also discovered a draft of an email addressed to Marcus Talley with photos of Octavia and Levante Johnson attached. The letter had not been sent. Desiree probably planned to show it to her father in person after graduation. "We're getting a search warrant for Talley's house today," Worthington told his assistant, Officer Jamal Harris. "I want to find those pills." "Do you think she's careless enough to keep them at home?" Harris asked. "Octavia thinks she's smarter than everyone else. People of that type rarely get rid of evidence completely. They're sure no one will ever guess to look for it." An hour later, the judge signed the warrant, and Worthington and a group of officers headed toward Talley's family home, a sprawling 2-story mansion in the upscale Lakeland neighborhood. Marcus Talley was at work, and Octavia greeted the police officers with icy calm. To what do I owe this attention, detective? She asked, standing in the doorway in an immaculate white suit. We have a warrant to search your home, Mrs. Talley, Worthington replied, holding out the document. It's part of the investigation into Desiree's death. Octavia ran her eyes over the paper. I don't understand what you hope to find here. My stepdaughter died at school from an accident. That's what we're trying to find out, the detective said calmly as he made his way into the house. The search began in the kitchen and living room, then moved to Marcus's office, and finally to the master bedroom. Octavia watched the process with her arms crossed over her chest and a cold smile. You're wasting your time, detective. I'd offer you tea, but I'm afraid you'd suspect me of trying to poison you. Worthington did not respond to the provocation. He methodically examined Octavia's dressing table, going through numerous jars of creams and perfumes. In the bathroom, Officer Harris discovered the first clue, a prescription vial of pills prescribed by Dr. Clarissa Lawrence. The drug matched the one found in Desiree's blood. These are my sleeping pills, Octavia explained, noticing the interest of the police officers. I've been having trouble sleeping since Desiree's death. Clary, my friend and my doctor, prescribed them for me. When exactly did she write that prescription? Worthington asked. 3 days ago. You can check the date on the label. The detective nodded. It was indeed a fresh prescription, written after Desiree's death. But that didn't mean Octavia hadn't had access to the same drug before. The search continued. In Octavia's dressing room, one of the officers discovered a safe hidden behind a row of designer dresses. The key, please, Worthington addressed Octavia. There's only jewelry and documents in there, she replied. Personal effects. The key, Mrs. Talley. With apparent reluctance, Octavia pulled a small key from a box on the dressing table. Worthington opened the safe and began methodically going through its contents. Among the jewelry, real estate documents, and wads of cash, he found a small plastic pillbox without a label. Inside were small white pills, very similar to those in the prescription vial. What are these, Mrs. Talley? I have no idea, Octavia shrugged. Probably some old medicine. I don't remember everything kept in the safe. Worthington handed the box to the forensic scientist for immediate analysis. We'll see if it matches the drug found in Desiree's blood. Octavia's face remained unperturbed, but the detective noticed her fingers clench into a fist. Mrs. Talley, I'd like you to come with us to the station for a statement. I've already testified. We have some new questions. At the police station, Worthington escorted Octavia into the interrogation room, a small room with gray walls and a table in the middle. He offered her water, which she rejected, and began recording. Mrs. Talley, tell us again about your actions during prom night. Octavia sighed with the look of someone forced to explain the obvious. We arrived with Marcus around 7 in the evening, socialized with the other parents, took pictures with Desiree. Then she retreated to her friends and I stayed with my husband. You didn't go away? Not for long. To the ladies' room, to the drinks table. Nothing out of the ordinary. You brought Desiree punch. Octavia tensed slightly. I may have. I don't remember exactly. Worthington placed a printout of the CCTV footage on the table. That's you, Mrs. Talley. You're pouring the punch and adding something to the glass. I don't see anything of the sort in that grainy image. I was just pouring a drink. The experts, on the other hand, see it differently. What did you add to Desiree's glass, Mrs. Talley? Nothing. That's absurd. Worthington silently laid the next photograph on the table, Octavia handing the glass to Desiree. Did you follow her afterward? No. I went back to my husband. That's odd, because the other cameras show you walking in the same direction as Desiree a couple minutes after her. Octavia nervously adjusted the collar of her blouse. I don't remember exactly all my movements. It was an emotional evening. What about your affair with Levante Johnson? The question seemed to catch Octavia off guard. She quickly regained her composure, but the second confusion was noticeable. I don't know what you mean. Mr. Johnson is my stepdaughter's teacher. Our relationship is purely formal. Worthington laid the printouts of photos from Desiree's phone on the table. Octavia and Levante holding hands in a coffee shop, kissing in the car, walking into a motel together. Desiree knew about your affair, the detective said, and was going to tell her father right after graduation. Octavia was silent, looking at the photos. We found a draft of a letter from Marcus with those pictures in her phone. She didn't have time to send it. That's an invasion of privacy, Octavia finally uttered. Desiree has been following me. It's abnormal. And you think it's normal to cheat on your husband with his daughter's teacher? My personal life had nothing to do with Desiree's death. It was an accident. At that moment, an officer entered the room and handed Worthington a note. After reading it, the detective smiled. The pills from your safe, Mrs. Talley. Preliminary analysis indicates that they are flunitrazepam, the same substance that was found in Desiree's blood. Octavia maintained her outward calm, but her eyes raced feverishly. I don't know anything about that. Someone could have planted them in my safe. To which only you have a key? That's an interesting theory. Worthington decided to change tactics. We have another witness, Mrs. Talley. Alma Rodriguez, the school janitor. She saw you coming out of the girls' restroom around the time Desiree died. According to her, you looked agitated with wet sleeves. It wasn't entirely true. The cleaning lady had indeed seen Octavia outside the restroom, but she hadn't remembered the exact time, nor had she mentioned wet sleeves. The bluff had worked, however. That woman doesn't understand anything, Octavia exclaimed. I was looking for Desiree. Marcus wanted to take a family photo. And you found her in the restroom? Yeah, I looked in, but I didn't see anyone. All the stalls were closed. You didn't check to see if anyone was in the stalls? You didn't call Desiree? Octavia was starting to get nervous. I don't remember exactly. It all happened so fast. Here's what I think, Mrs. Talley, Worthington said, pitching forward. Desiree found out about your affair with Levante Johnson. She was following you, gathering evidence, and was going to tell her father everything. You couldn't let that happen. Divorce would take away your comfortable life, your reputation, your money, so you decided to get rid of your stepdaughter by faking an accident at the prom. That's absurd, Octavia whispered. You slipped flunitrazepam into her drink. When the drug began to take effect, you followed her into the restroom. Desiree felt sick, bent over the toilet, and you took advantage of her helpless state and drowned her. No! I didn't do that! Your fingerprints are on the toilet stall door handle, Mrs. Talley. The cameras recorded you putting something in Desiree's drink. The same drug found in your safe was found in the victim's blood. You had motive, opportunity, and means. Octavia dropped her head on her hands. A heavy silence hung in the room, broken only by the hum of the air conditioner. She should have stayed out of my life, Octavia finally said in a quiet voice. Always so right, so principled, the perfect daughter. And me? I was just trying to be happy. Do you admit to killing Desiree Talley? Octavia lifted her head. There were no tears in her eyes, only weariness and something resembling relief. I didn't mean to do that, just wanted her to be quiet. Gave me time to explain things to Marcus in my own way. But she was so stubborn. What happened in the bathroom, Mrs. Talley? I was watching her. When I saw her getting sick, I went after her. She was leaning over the toilet bowl, and I just held her head. At first I wanted to talk to her, to convince her not to tell Marcus, but she wouldn't listen. She said I wasn't worthy of her father, that she'd tell him the truth. And then I just wouldn't let her go. Held her until she stopped resisting. Worthington wrote down the confession and read Octavia her rights. The woman listened with a detached look, as if everything that was happening to someone else. He's going to find out anyway, she said, as the officers handcuffed her. Everyone's going to find out now. That evening that day, Worthington sat in his office, finishing his report. Desiree Talley's case was solved. The killer had confessed and was awaiting trial. But the detective did not feel the usual satisfaction of a completed investigation. He thought of Marcus Talley, who had lost his daughter one day and learned that the wife he trusted had not only cheated on him, but had become the murderer of his child. Thought of Desiree, the bright, principled girl whose life had been cut short so early because of other people's secrets. Worthington closed the case file. Octavia Talley had built her life on a lie, creating the illusion of a perfect family. When that illusion was threatened, she chose to commit a terrible crime just to maintain the appearance of prosperity. But in the end, all the masks were torn off, revealing the true face, cold, calculating, capable of murder. All secrets come to light, the detective muttered. turning off the office light. Always.